everyone. So in the last part, you may have noticed that I actually did have to re-record the video thing, so some things may not have matched up so well. But this one I was more willing to re-record because it was more ridiculous and easier to have fun with, so I didn't mind like revisiting it. And I ended up listening to it some while I'm earning free points on Tappy Tunes. And I noticed a couple of things that I missed, but I'm not going to address them now. If they come up again, I'll address them then. I don't think it was anything that I was like horribly off in not addressing. There was definitely some stuff that I missed, and maybe some of my commentary before sounded contradictory given what they had just said, and I had just missed it. But otherwise, like it wasn't too terrible. So, but for now, we're just gonna go ahead and listen to the rest of this. So buckle the fuck up.
True. We have to answer everybody's questions all the time. You almost feel like you need to have a university degree in everything, in ethics, in every single animal, in all their digestive tracts, where they live in the world, every vitamin, every mineral. You're expected to know how much protein is in every single food. It is exhausting.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, but for the vast majority of people, I don't think they're going to like drill you on that unless you are actively shoving it in their faces. Like, I don't care that like you do you with veganism. Like I just don't fucking care. Like if that's what you want to do, you are more than welcome to. It's when you're like that vegan teacher, for example, is like you should be vegan and speciesism and vegan phobia. If you want to go about that, then yeah, I'm gonna ask you some fucking questions, and yeah, you should be able to answer them. I don't understand this thing with these like pseudo social media activists that want to spout a bunch of shit, but then when people ask them for clarification or ask them for receipts or ask them for any sort of expansion on what's essentially a soundbite piece of rhetoric, it becomes it's not my job to educate you. It becomes it's exhausting. You're asking for a lot of emotional labor. You were the one that took on this emotional labor by becoming an activist. I'm sorry, that's the way it is. If you don't want the responsibility of spreading information, then don't pen yourself as an activist and don't just put out rhetoric level sound bites.
I tell my students, say to them, look, I'm just trying to do my best to do the least harm to animals. And all of the questions that you have can be found on the internet. You can find them. And that's a way of just speaking your truth.
That's totally fine if you were just like, I'm vegan, and then they start pelting you with questions, because there's going to be like the odd person that does that. If that's how you want to do it, that's fine. If you were telling me I should be vegan, no, don't tell me to go to the fucking internet. If you are going to try to push your choices onto me, then I have the right to question you. I do. And if you want to fucking take the coward's way out and act like, I'm just trying to do my best and the answers to your questions are on the internet, then I'm not going to fucking take you seriously. You're not like a real activist in ways of what you're championing. Because if your goal is to get more people on your side, if your goal is, this is, for some people, their goal is just to stick up for others. That's fine. There are certain circumstances where, no, they don't need to explain themselves, they don't need to do any of that. But especially with veganism, which is a far more like a lot of vegans have far more of a pompous air to them. Not all vegans, but vegan teacher is a pretty good example of it. Where you want to get up in everyone's fucking business, you want to shame them, you want to say that everyone should be vegan, and you want to put out that stance, then you better have some evidence and you better be willing to back up your statements, even if it's just with your own personal belief and expanding on those. You don't get to put out these blanket statements that everyone should be vegan, that speciesism exists, and that XYZ, whatever your talking points are, but then take the coward's way out saying the answers to your questions when you were the one that posed the topic in the first place. The answer to your questions are on the internet. Fuck off then. Fuck off. Stop telling me everyone needs to be vegan. If you aren't going to put up your part of the argument, given that you are the one that is asserting a certain viewpoint, then I'm not going to give any credence to your viewpoints at all. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have people take you seriously and then nope out of the conversation. You got to pick one. If you really are just vegan and want to be left alone, that's totally fine. Then you can be like, I'm not answering those questions. These are just my personal choices. Totally fine. You go, you do your own thing. You're going to say everyone should be vegan and XYZ, then you better be prepared to have a conversation.
But also feeling like you don't have to shoulder all of the explanations to give to them.
This is a point that anyone can relate to on some level, vegan or not. One of the reasons people can be uncomfortable around vegans is that they feel they have to defend themselves. Well, for anyone openly vegan, this is a default expectation at all times, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Imagine having to always be prepared to explain and defend every aspect of veganism, and also answer for every action of every vegan as if you are somehow responsible for whatever some vegan somewhere did.
Most reasonable people aren't going to expect that of you, and this feels like something you're taking to the nth degree of like maybe one overzealous Karen that got in your face and then applying it to everyone that has questions on veganism. Like it's and there are issues with certain vegans. Like there was I used to watch a lot of like public freakouts, Karens in the wild, that sort of thing, and one of them was a vegan that stormed into a restaurant and made this whole like emotional scene and gave a little speech about a story of a chicken she adopted, saying the animals just want to live. The animals like these they're very emotional. And yeah, I'm not gonna take you seriously, but if you're gonna come storming into a restaurant and doing this big thing, and I approach you and I have questions, I think that you should answer them. I do. You disrupted my lunch. You disrupted my lunch to put forth the message of your movement. Then you are taking that responsibility. You are shouldering that responsibility to answer the questions, given that you just did something that most people would not do. Now, does that mean you have to have answers to everything? No. You can disagree with someone within your own movement. No one's saying that you have to 100% agree with everything everyone in your movement does. But most people aren't expecting that from you anyway. We want to know why you are pushing that everyone should be vegan in a la the vegan teacher. Sometimes it's a genuine like, how do I get started? How do you get protein in? Especially if you can't eat, like I can't handle soy. I don't eat soy because it gives me like the worst stomach cramps imaginable. So how would I get protein in that way? Like those would be questions like B12 vitamins, because I think vegans are typically pretty low in B12 vitamins. How do you get those in? Like that, I don't think those are unreasonable questions to ask someone. If you are putting forth that everyone needs to be vegan, then those like how do you get your protein in? What are alternatives to soy for people that can't have soy? How do you get your B12 in? Um, how do you grocery shop? How do you afford it? Because a lot of vegan foods can be costlier depending on where you go. But that's another thing. There's that perspective that vegan foods are more expensive. I don't think that if you are going to put forth that everyone should be vegan, I don't think these are unreasonable questions to ask you and have you answer. You are the one that put yourself on this soapbox. So don't get mad when people hold you to it.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me that. They say, because of things that you say, Miss Katie, I feel like I have to justify things that you're doing. And I'm saying to them, no, you don't. Just tell them that you are vegan your way and that you use your explanations. For example, when I tell people, I use this analogy and I use the LGBTQ flag. And I say to people that, first of all, they did change their flag. They have an upgraded version with a cutaway out of it with some black in it. And I say to people, look, they rejected that flag, and so we took it. And I, as a bisexual woman, have had the rainbow flag anyway since I was 16 years old. And so for me, it's not that big of a deal. And I just say, well, you know what's great about the flag is that people often say, doctors and dietitians eat a rainbow of foods. So what could be a more perfect flag than the rejected flag of the LGBTQ? And the flag also is an anti-oppression flag. So it
I still have issues with the appropriation of the LGBTQ flag. Like I understand that she's a bisexual woman and that's fine, but I still don't think that it's right to take that for a completely unrelated movement, personally. personally. Now, you may feel differently. That was actually my first time seeing that version of the flag. I had seen it with the black and brown stripes and the trans color arrows, but not with the yellow and the circle in it. I'm guessing that's non-binary, but I don't know for sure. Even if some people like rejected that flag, that doesn't mean that everyone rejected that flag, and it probably still serves a purpose somewhere within the LGBT community. And so to take it and appropriate it for, like, I'm not even one typically for cultural appropriation talk or anything like that, but that just, it really kind of feels off to me.
It's perfect. It's a rainbow, which demonstrates all the different colors that have to do with the earth, the planet, and it's also a symbol of anti-oppression. But when I talk about that, people get very angry and they say, how could you be so crazy as to do that? But my thinking is that I also want to remind people who talk about being oppressed that often they're also the oppressors, and they should think about that. If they're holding the flag up during Pride Day and they're
This is part of the reason why I have issues with talks of oppression. And like, don't get me wrong, there is oppression out there. I'm not denying that. But I think there's become an over focus on oppression, oppressors, and the oppressed. I think it's reached a point where it has now become the constant talk of oppression and it being kind of widespread. I mean, even the fact that that vegan teacher is using the word oppression to describe being vegan, the word oppression is losing its meaning. It's losing its punch, and it's just kind of becoming annoying. At this point, I think that the word oppression and talking about oppression largely is no longer productive because of people like this, because it's been taken out of the most legitimate talks and it is being overly oversaturated with other less pressing movements and shit like this. I mean, if you want to talk about animal oppression, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but you've been using oppression to talk about vegan phobia. And I just, like, there's just, it kind of goes in line with violence. Um, People calling you obese is not violence. People telling you to lose weight is not violence. And I don't know if I was really debating about whether I want to bring this talking point in, but it is pretty firmly where I stand. I don't think that misgendering someone is a form of violence. It's impolite. It's fucking rude. But to call something a form of violence, I mean, it's just, I've seen it used in a couple of different circles that I'm like, you are cheapening the word of violence. Violence means that you are being like physically harmed, like physically, actively harmed. And I just, it pisses me off. It really does.
sort of saying to everybody, I'm proud to be who I am. Well, are they proud? Talking about being against oppression while they have corpses inside of them is something to think about. I think all members of the LGBTQ should be striving to be vegan. But then I think that about everybody with every skin color, every age, every religion. Everybody can strive to be as vegan as possible.
And also, have data and statistics for every potential question. And also, make sure your responses don't come across as judgmental or combative, even if you were approached with aggression, and even if you're being actively judged and preached to while being accused of being judgmental and preachy. And also, make sure that your responses are suited to the exact individual and situation you're in, and also preserve the...
Yeah, that's another thing. Sometimes in my comment sections, I write a comment and I just copy and paste it over and over because there's just one of me and there's thousands of comments. And then somebody will say something like, oh, she's just copying and pasting the answers or some comment. And it's like, yeah, because otherwise I would be there 24 hours a day responding to all of the comments and not being able to create any new videos.
Relationship, if with a friend, family member, work colleague, or boss. And also, try not to bring any emotional intensity from your previous experiences of being rejected, mocked, and so...
That's right. That's another thing that I do in my videos. I mean, I'm a normal human person, so sometimes I feel rage and anger at how much violence there is. And you guys can understand that when you're looking at what's going on in the war right now. Many people around the world are enraged, whatever side they're on, whether they're supporting the Israelis or the Palestinians. It's a very heated topic. And when I see violence going on around the world towards innocent animals and people eating corpses in front of me, sometimes I get enraged. And other times, I feel deeply sad and I cry. But no matter what kind of emotion you have, you're always told you should not be emotional. You should just talk about it. Just sit there quietly and talk about it.
I don't think this is something that has been talked about with a couple of different social justice movements that I've seen, and I think people misunderstand what we're asking for when we ask you to approach something in a non-emotional way. There's a difference between emotional arguments and non-emotional arguments. And if the whole concept behind your argument is simply because that's how you feel, it's not a very strong argument. No one's saying you can't be passionate about you whatever cause you're fighting for. You absolutely can. But the general is a couple of good rules of thumb is when you're trying to put forth your perspective, don't give blanket statements that put others in a negative light, don't actively attack others, don't swear, don't name call, those sorts of things, because it detracts from your argument. I think there's this misconstruing when we talk about emotional arguments versus um logical arguments. And this, we have no right to steal their lives. That is an emotional argument. You are playing off pathos in your argument here, rather than coming at it saying, do you believe animals should have agency? Do you believe animals are capable of thought? And then you can kind of discuss and figure out where, like, the person you're talking to comes through on what an animal's level of personhood would be, and if that level of personhood should then be acknowledged when consuming them. And if you believe that an animal has personhood and an animal is capable of thoughts and feelings, are you comfortable eating that animal that you agree has a level of personhood? Now, some people are just not going to agree. Some people don't think animals have personhood at all. Some people view personhood only as far as their pets. So there is like some discussion to be had there. But what you're doing here is saying we have no right to steal their lives. You're using visually evocative pieces of media to make your point, but all you're doing is playing off reactionary emotions rather than stating your case. I'm hoping this makes sense.
But when you do that, you also do not get any attention to the matter at hand. So you have to try, look at Emily's channel, for example. How many people have seen this video? 13,000. But I can guarantee you that the vast, vast majority of the people watching this are vegans. Vegans tend to live in an echo chamber and support each other. But who needs to see this video are the people who follow me, people who hate vegans, people who...
I think you misunderstand why some people hate vegans. It's not because they don't eat animals. And you even said yourself that vegans can live in an echo chamber, so perhaps maybe your talking points don't resonate with the average person because you have been so much in a cyclical ass pat sort of discussion with your vegan friends about how right you are, that perhaps there is a disconnect there.
Enjoy being vegan phobic. So this is why I'm going around and presenting other people's views to try to get people to follow her channel. So please do. Okay, her channel's called bitesizevegan.org. And in the comment section, tell her that you subscribed because that vegan teacher sent you.
Insulted and disparaged for being vegan, and also make sure not to reflect badly on all other vegans and veganism itself, and also try not to betray your own convictions, the animals, the planet, and all of society, and also do all of this with the knowledge that by answering questions posed to you, you may be accused of talking about veganism all
Yes, you will. Yes, you will. And in fact, no matter how I talk about veganism on my channel, I am consistently told you're not doing it right. Whether you're laughing too much, it's not right. Talking too much about food, that means you're not talking enough about the animals. If you are attacking these stars because you want to get their millions of followers to be vegan, you are accused of being an attention whore.
I don't understand people. I don't understand the entitlement of people.
And the truth is, yeah, you're trying to get attention, but it's because you want people to watch the documentaries. You want that to be there. If you could just put a sign on your screen, on your YouTube every day without even appearing there, that would be perfect. But nobody would come, right? So we're just trying our best.
All the time. Being openly vegan can feel like having to be a sociologist, psychologist, and walking encyclopedia with expert skills in emotional and social negotiation and infinite patience and compassion. Honestly, sometimes you just want to be a person around other people. But before we get to that note of hope, let's look at how vegan self-silencing and its causes actually harm all of us.
And before we go any further, make sure you press the like button on this video and make sure that you follow and press the notification bell as well. And then, of course, on Emily's videos as well.
The need for a societal evolution away from eating animals is becoming more and more evident for the well-being of our planet, our communities, and of course, the animals themselves. At the same time, we humans are social animals, and we often look to what most other people are doing to aid in our decision-making. And most people are still eating animals. Researchers behind the delightfully named study, How Do You Know Someone's Vegan? They Won't Always Tell You, propose that vegan self-silencing could reinforce this perception that not eating animals is some niche phenomenon, only adopted by a few people on the fringe of society. While it may seem like a small matter for individual vegans to stay silent about their veganism, the study authors reference how seemingly trivial differences in the number of people that hold a certain personal preference within smaller groups can, in the long run, result in macro-level consequences for entire societies. From this viewpoint, the tendency to self-silence among vegans may prevent the onset of momentum and critical mass that is needed to achieve a societal tipping point.
Being vegan doesn't mean that you just do your best not to eat, wear, or use animals. Being vegan also means you bravely speak out to defend.
And that right there, that little song, being vegan doesn't mean you just don't just do your best to not eat, use, or wear animals, but you also have to basically do this activist thing. That is where most movements, I think, lose their support. You have to be willing to let some people approach it and come in as a supporter in as much as they can support. The minute that you are constantly attacking people for not doing enough, you lose support. I understand that for some people it's just not enough. Like, I get that. And I get that a lot of people will say that they're part of the movement for clout. And I understand that too. But there are some people where they're like, I have enough going on in my life and I support you and I want to support you, but this is the limited thing that I can do. And it's that narrative that it's not enough that makes you, it's like, fine then, fuck off. You know? I have enough going on with my life. I don't need this drama. Fuck off. Bye.
Simply asking vegans to be more vocal about their veganism places them in the catch-22 of eliciting the very stigma we've covered. The problem isn't so much vegan self-silencing, but rather the reasons driving that silence. As we've learned in this video, going against social norms can have social consequences. Research shows that the fear of receiving the same treatment as vegans prevents other people from taking steps to move away from eating animals.
Sadly, we know vegan phobia exists and that it was never on any vegan's Christmas list. And vegan phobia can hurt some days, but don't be like the zombies around you in a cowardly daze. You've been brave enough to learn, you've seen the light. So continue.
You're on the right side of history. No one knows whether they're on the right side of history or not until everything is said and done. I mean, don't get me wrong, don't take that to be too far broad, but the idea that you're fighting so that way you can be on the right side of history, I don't know, there's something about that seems to fuel a certain mindset that gives certain people the feeling that they should be able to do XYZ and not face any social consequences because they're on the right side of history. It's like the welcome to what the right side of history is. The right side of history means that you will not be loved. The right side of history means that you will likely be seen as a harbinger of annoyance for the vast majority of people. So get over yourselves. And this whole thing of this whole victimization of vegans thing is just, it pisses me off. It pisses me off because it's not anywhere near what, it's a choice that you've made. You've decided to take up this mantle. With that comes consequences. Should you get death threats? No. Should you get KYS messages? No. But if people think that you're stupid or call you stupid for your viewpoints, that's part of life.
To be strong when you're sad, just listen to this song and stay vegan anyway. Stay vegan anyway. Listen clearly to what I say. Stay vegan anyway. I completely believe that. I mean, it's science-based, but I also have evidence of it in my own comment section. You will see that there are not that many vegans who are there because they are afraid of the backlash, and that's really unfortunate.
Are you sure it's that they're afraid of the backlash, or they just see that you have a cuckoo bananas way of presenting things and that your takes aren't nearly as good as you think they are? And quite frankly, you are kind of like a caricature of vegans as most people see them, and they don't necessarily want to be associated with you or put on that same level as they who are just going around living a lifestyle with the dietary restriction of vegan, and they don't necessarily want to put everything on other people the way you do. They're just kind of living their life, and maybe they just don't want to be grouped in with you. Maybe that's why they don't comment. Maybe that's why you don't have many vegans in your comments. Maybe that's why people don't necessarily defend you, because perhaps you are doing something wrong, at least in the way you present your message.
We get vegans to be out, to get out of their bubble, out of their echo chamber, and to be seen by the general public.
Steps they'd be open to exploring were it not for the potential social backlash. This may seem like an impossible gridlock of necessary yet understandably resisted change, but there is evidence things may be shifting. Researchers, advocates, political leaders, and organizations are becoming aware of the importance of institutional support for a societal evolution away from farming animals. A shift in our collective relationship with eating animals has to involve more than us as individuals, and there are organizations working at a systemic level in an effort that none of us have to shoulder this alone. For example, some universities, hospitals, schools, governmental bodies, businesses, and even fast food chains serve plant-based food as their default, with the option to opt in to animal-based food.
That's the way it should be. In fact, the perfect solution would be that all schools are vegan and all hospitals are vegan, and that they shouldn't even be allowed to serve any animals in these places. That's the future, anyway, that we're hoping for.
A significant decrease in animal food.
Do you honestly not see why people don't like you? Do you honestly not, do you see that you are trying to put forth an overarching decision, dietary decision for a wide variety of people when humans are omnivores? It doesn't mean that the plant-based diet is impossible per se, but by and large humans live as omnivores. And it's been that way since as far back as as I've read. I've seen a couple people in my comments on both sides say that humans were originally vegan and then humans were originally completely carnivores. I actually looked it up with on a National Geographic article, and then a couple of ones the National Geographic one was the one that really stuck out to me because it was like a history of human dietary habits. And while we were definitely originally a bit more plant-based, meat was always part of the diet. It's just that meat wasn't, you can always come by meat. You couldn't always get meat. So when humans couldn't get meat, they subsisted on plant matter, but meat was still a fairly regular part of the diet.
Consumption and changing attitudes about plant-based foods. They found that when not eating animals is the norm rather than the deviation, people, including meat eaters, are more likely to enjoy eating plant-based meals.
Yeah, because they're
I personally am in favor of like a meatless Monday sort of thing. I think that we probably eat too much meat just in terms of health wise. I don't think that meat needs to be completely removed from our diets personally. If you want to remove meat, by all means, go ahead. For me, I don't think that would be like the healthiest option. I like having some solid meat protein in my diet, but I do try to go meatless one day a week because I think that that's beneficial to me. That being said, it's not a vegan day a week. I eat eggs instead of eating meat. So it still is not vegan, it's vegetarian. But that is what I do. Doesn't mean that everyone has to. Doesn't mean that it is the true perfect thing to do. I'm just trying to vary my diet some and doing what makes me feel best.
prejudicial. They're prejudiced when they see that something is vegan. They're like, oh, it's probably going to taste bad and I'm not going to order it. I've seen it many times in stores. I say to them, do you have any vegan croissants or vegan donuts? They're like, yeah, these are. I say, why don't you write a sign? Why don't you put a sign out that says that they're vegan? And they say, well, because people might not buy them. They're going to assume that they don't taste good. But if they don't know that there's no eggs in them and they don't know that there's no dairy in them, they are perfectly happy to eat them and they love them. So that's something for you guys to think about too. Try vegan foods. You will see when it comes to donuts and ice cream and cakes, you can't even tell.
I disagree. It depends on it depends on the recipe. I've had like a couple of decent vegan pastry type things, but the vast majority of the vegan sort of stuff that I've tried from like recipes and stuff, you can definitely taste the difference.
Always in the mood to save animals and eat delicious vegan food. I'm always in the mood to save animals and eat delicious vegan food.
In essence, rather than moving towards a world where everyone is vegan, we need to move towards a world without vegans at all, where not eating animals is simply our default, where we can all collectively act on our shared values without.
This comes back around though to and this happens with certain social justice movements, mostly the ones that are like exclusively social media, where their solution to their perceived oppression is to make everyone like them. And it's like, do you not see how horrible your argument is? Do you really not see like your perspective is that everyone should be vegan, therefore vegan is no longer a label, and that because veganism is the default. Just kind of reminds me of like then all stores, or not all stores, but like all planes should have extra wide seating, even though that would not accommodate the vast majority of people. There's this perspective of, in the fat acceptance community, there should be a number of clothing sizes and stuff that simply wouldn't sell. There are certain like accommodations and changes just in infrastructure that should be made to accommodate fat people, even if it wouldn't necessarily be beneficial for the vast majority.
Fear of going it alone. On an individual level, the less we stigmatize and stereotype vegans or anyone's effort to move away from eating animals, the more welcome people will feel to be open about their choices. And the more we see other people acting on the things that we also care about, the more welcome we can feel to make our own changes.
So yeah, she's saying make sure you comment. So go ahead and subscribe to her channel, please. And coming up on my channel here right now will be a bunch of other videos. Please click on them. Be
All right, I think we're at the end of it. This just again is like it's like a fucking oppression circle jerk. I just the everyone is a so it's not that I think that everyone is oppressed, but I think when you try to take it in this viewpoint, like everyone is oppressed for something if you try hard enough. Like you can finagle a line of reasoning for oppression for just about anything. And like I don't wear makeup, and it's because I have extremely sensitive skin. Even though makeup that's labeled hypoallergenic isn't necessarily hypoallergenic for me. Like it can still cause a reaction. Fragrance free tends to be the safer option for me personally, but even that it's not guaranteed. I can't even get certain I got like an Aveeno face moisturizer once. My eyelids swelled because it had such a bad reaction to the moisturizer. I could finagle that into a form of oppression of because there's so many additives, I can't take part in just about any sort of skincare or makeup or any sort of expression that other people get. And in reality, I've just kind of learned to let it go altogether. If I really wanted makeup and I really wanted to get into that, I could save my money and buy the more expensive shit. That is typically like the high end. Not it's the one time someone like tested it on my arm. It was the only thing that didn't cause a major reaction, but it was like really expensive makeup that I didn't really want to put out the money for. I have other priorities in my life. So, like, if you want to, I could go down that road and turn that into a bid for oppression because I can't buy, because for the vast majority of skincare products, I just can't use them. But it's not. It's not oppression. It's an unfortunate reality of my body and how it reacts to skincare stuff. But that doesn't mean that I'm oppressed. There's certain places that tall people struggle to fit into because they're so tall. Doesn't mean they're oppressed. And just the biggest part is that you are vegan is an active choice you made. It is an active choice you made. And people like you get up in everyone's faces and then cry oppression because people call you out on your bullshit or people tell you to leave them the fuck alone. I just I mean, I'm not saying that she doesn't experience some shit that really isn't okay, like the KYS messages, like that sort of thing, but the vast majority of what was said here just felt like crybaby bullshit to me. I'm gonna leave it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.